Because we're moving from the shack to the boathouse, this is MuggleCast episode 219 for January the 23rd, 2011.
This week's episode of MuggleCast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 75,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, nonfiction, and periodicals. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast. And by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your new account, go to squarespace.com and use the code MUGGLE. Welcome to MuggleCast episode 219. Andrew, Micah, Eric here this week to give you the lowdown on what's going on in the Harry Potter world. Slow news, but big chapter-by-chapter segment to get through this week. And we're going to do it as professionally and as
accurately,
accurately, and inspirationally as possible, as you've come to expect it from us. I'm Andrew Sims.
I'm Eric Skull.
And I'm Micah Tannenbaum.
Micah Tannenbaum, what is in the news? Come on, don't hold out any longer. I gotta know.
You said it was a slow news period, and you're right. But the good thing is the news we have gotten is big news. We got our first still from Deathly Hallows Part 2, and you know how big I am on pictures.
The first, you should have said, Micah, you should have said the first of like 15,000 pictures, right?
Yeah, and given that this is the last film, there probably will be at least that many, Eric, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I actually got kind of sad when I posted it because I was like, oh, this is one of the last firsts. You know, first picture. We have a first picture, we have a first trailer, we have a first TV spot. These are all big, big stories. However, it's not technically the first picture because I put first picture in the headline because it creates more buzz. But the big first picture will be the first official still released by Warner Brothers in high resolution.
Okay, so this was not that, right?
Well, I was going to say the first one that you don't have to take down at the request of Warner Brothers.
Exactly. This one that you are talking about, we had to take down at the request of, as was predicted, by the way. It was a black and white photo with a property of WB watermark in 3 places.
I think they released those on purpose, though.
Maybe. We still don't know what the source was. But.
So you didn't stick up to Warner Brothers and say, like, well, if you want us to take this down, you got to give us a high-res version of it? You didn't say that?
No, I think they weren't ready. But I did say to them, I'll take it down, but you do know it's on every other movie website right now, right? And the WB rep was like, welcome to my morning.
No thanks to us.
Yeah, no thanks to us. We were kind of first with it. But anyway, it's a picture of Neville in the foreground, and you see Bellatrix in the background. And it's a cool photo. I mean, it's low res, but it's an exciting photo. It's from the battle, which apparently is going to take up about 45 minutes to an hour of the film. So I would guess the majority of the photos may be coming from the battle.
We're keeping with the Deathly Hallows theme here, but we're going to go to part 1 for just a minute. And we talked about it on the last show. It's slowly climbing up the charts. And Andrew, I know you mentioned how much I like to post about
numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And so finally, it has moved past both Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince. It's currently number 10 all time in worldwide box office gross. And it only has, if it's going to make it there, Sorcerer's Stone to pass. I don't think it's going to happen, though.
That's really cool. I mean, and WB's kind of used to it now. But for any film to reach the top 10 grossing films of all time, I mean, that's an amazing.
What does
that
mean for fans? What does it mean that?
It means nothing for us.
People are still going to see it though in other countries and all across the world. People are saying, "Hey, you should go see this movie." Or is it that did Deathly Hallows Part 1 have really late release dates in some countries, and that's why it continues to climb?
That could be it. And, I think winter break helps a lot. A lot of people are off over the winter break, so they may want to go see the movie again. And yeah, I think you're right. Those international release dates that were later than the November date that we saw in the U.S. and in the UK, as well as a few other countries. So, you noted in the news post, Mike, it's now 500,000 away.
Well,
But-
what happened is this, and I'm actually looking at boxofficemojo.com right now, which is where we get all these numbers from. It had moved past Order of the Phoenix. It is now below Order of the Phoenix again. I'm not sure exactly why that is, because the number posted earlier in the week was 938.3 million.
And now it's 937.3.
Right. So, suffice it to say, by the time the show is released, if it's going for a Sunday release, that it will pass Order of the Phoenix because it's only, about $0.9 million away from passing Order of the Phoenix. The tall task is going to be catching Sorcerer's Stone, which is at 974.7. Wow. I think it's too far away. I don't even think it'll get past Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End.
But keep in mind, it's not going to be in theaters for much longer, so...
Right.
I think,
unless it is re-released in 3D, which is something to keep an eye on, because if that happens, it has a chance to catch Sorcerer's Stone.
My prediction is Part 1 will be back in theaters in 3D right before Part 2 comes out, or right with Part 2.
I thought they scrapped that project.
No, they said they do want to eventually release it, whether it's on DVD in 3D or back in theaters, because at this point they have spent so much money on it, they want to get that money back. So it's got to be in some theaters right before Part 2, because some people will want to see Part 1 at like 9:30 p.m. and then Part 2 will start almost right away, right after Part 1 ends. At midnight.
I wonder what the benefits of seeing Part 1 in 3D are going to be. Like, what scenes are going to stand out that much more in 3D?
The snake will come out at you.
I guess so.
But I think, though, regardless of how they're lined up right now, I mean, having 1/4 of the top 12 movies of all time is pretty good.
Before we get to the big story of the week, first, we'd like to remind you about our two sponsors for this week's episode. First, Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 75,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature and featuring audio versions of many New York Times bestsellers. For listeners of MuggleCast, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try out their awesome service. One audiobook to consider is Orson Scott Card's classic, Ender's Game. Check out the special 20th anniversary edition, which is digitally remastered with a full cast production. So to purchase that or any other audiobook of your choice for free, go to audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast. That's audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast. This episode is also brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create and manage a high-quality website or blog. Create a website that's uniquely you, to display your photos from Flickr, a blog you've been thinking about starting, or the tweets and RSS feeds you like the most, all in the design and colors of your choice. Whatever you want to communicate, you can say it easily and with style with Squarespace. I use Squarespace to create a new website for my podcast, Hype. If you check out hypepodcast.com, you'll see just this really nice website that I created only in a few minutes. I have a lot of HTML and web design experience from working on MuggleNet over the years, but I needed none of it to create this website for my podcast, Hype. So again, check out hypepodcast.com. You'll see how nicely designed it is, how easy it is to read and navigate, and it's thanks to Squarespace. They'll make you look like a fantastic web designer. The best part is you can try it out today for free. Visit squarespace.com and sign up for their free trial. Then choose a design template to get started. No credit card is needed. Just give it a try to build your website. Then, after 2 weeks, if you decide to purchase, enter code MUGGLE to receive 10% off for 6 months. That's squarespace.com and use offer code MUGGLE. We thank Squarespace for their support of MuggleCast.
Well, let's get to the big story of the week, Andrew. You were all set. I know you were pumped up to reveal this in your set report, and somebody beat you to it.
And it was so funny because I was talking with my friend Edward from the Leaky Cauldron the other day, and I said, it's really exciting. We're going to get to reveal in our set reports this big scene change. And he's like, yeah, it's going to be really cool. And then 2 days later, this comes out. I'm like, no! So frustrating.
So what happened is Andrew Ackland Snow, who is the art director for Harry Potter,
And now my worst enemy.
I never even heard of him before, to be honest with you. No, this is in no way supposed to be offensive towards Andrew, but I've never heard of this guy before. Usually we hear about, Stuart Craig or Alan Gilmore, so I'm not quite sure who this guy is, but he did reveal that Severus Snape will have a different death scene in Deathly Hallows Part 2 from the book. And this has created a little bit of a discussion over the course of the last couple days.
Yeah, well, I'll read the quote from Andrew Ackland Snow. And some people in the comments were confused by this, but I think I understand what he's saying. Quote, "We wanted to change a bit where Snape dies. In the book, he dies on the Shrieking Shack, and we wanted to get him out from not a conventional interior, but from that kind of box, to do it in a more dramatic atmosphere. We asked J.K. Rowling if she agreed for that to happen in there, because we hadn't really seen it before," referring to the boathouse. "We made a crystal house," and now people are confused by this crystal house comment. He's saying that the boathouse is kind of made of crystal, I guess. But I think what he's saying is, it's transparent. So anyway, he says, "And you can see what happens in the boathouse from there. But also, the school is in flames. And she," being Jo, "loved it. Besides, it's a very romantic place to die. Snape dies in an extremely good way, I gotta say." And in the same news post, I reminded everybody about the comments from set designer Stuart Craig, who said last February, quote, "The last time I cried was a few days ago when we filmed the death of Alan Rickman's character Snape. It's quite difficult to cry in rushes, where we watch the previous day's work, but he's an extraordinary actor and he dies an extremely good death."
Wow.
So
now we can finally talk about this. It's not embargoed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm still technically embargoed from
revealing further details.
Until
there,
when?
Yeah, there are a couple more details that Stuart Craig said to us on set, and we'll be able to release those in a couple months. But are you guys disappointed in this change for Snape?
I think if you're taking this purely from a movie standpoint, it is going to be great. And the way that they set this up with Hogwarts burning down in the background and, Snape lying there dying in this boathouse is going to be great for film. But I also understand the argument that other people are making where there are just certain things you don't change. It's not about saying that J.K. Rowling approved it, so we're okay with it. It's about, taking what was in the book and putting it on screen and not changing that, being true to the book in that sense. Not to say that what they do isn't going to be great or isn't going to be better. It's just about following what's in the text. And I think, those people have just as much of a legitimate argument as the people who say, well, if J.K. Rowling likes it, how can we disagree?
So you're saying some people in the comments are saying, is nothing sacred, right? I mean, as far as
exactly.
keeping...
And I don't think they're not saying that for the purposes of watching a movie that this isn't going to be this great epic scene. They're just saying, hey, can't we just stick to what's in the book?
I see that.
And your thoughts, Eric?
There was a scene that was supposed to take place in the Shrieking Shack that was cut in the Shrieking Shack in movie 3, and that mattered far more to me than this Snape's death scene. It happens, at least we know it happens. They're not going to not kill Snape. It happens somewhere else. I'm excited. I think when we heard from Stuart Craig, I was talking about the Marauders scene, by the way. But when we heard from Stuart Craig in February, that he cried when Snape died, or when Alan Rickman's Snape died when they were filming it, it just made me feel so good about it. And seeing Part 1 and how there were scenes of Deathly Hallows Part 1 where it wasn't true to the book. For instance, Hedwig's death. And I think that the choices they made were choices, in the end, I really agreed with. And I can definitely see where fans are coming from. Why couldn't it have happened in the shack? But I just feel personally that during the final battle, Harry is kind of everywhere. And the Shrieking Shack is pretty far away for him to, walk while people are engaged in battle and dying and stuff. It just seems... So I figured they'd do something different for the film. And I was kind of expecting this almost. But I will say the Crystal House comment did not make sense to me, but it's a boat house. So that makes. I was like, is there a house on school grounds? What's up with that? Like Dumbledore's tomb isn't even on school grounds, but if it's a boathouse, that makes sense.
I think
right.
My biggest problem with it, Andrew, when you first told me about it, was that for the story, it's about, in a way, coming full circle. Because if you remember, Snape almost died, going into the Shrieking Shack, and he was saved by Harry's father. And that is inevitably where he ends up dying in the series. And I think that was written for a specific purpose. And to take that and to completely change it for the film, just because it may be more dramatic, that's where I had the problem with it, because I thought that, J.K. Rowling wrote this a specific way. He almost died, and then in the end he does end up dying there. So... yeah.
I think that everybody in the end will feel good about it. I mean, considering, again, the Stuart Craig crying comment, I think that spoke volumes, because it was so moving and even incomplete. It wasn't digitally, it wasn't finished, it wasn't part of the editing, it was just the sort of shot that they got, and he was so moved by it. So I think it's going to be really something special. And what a lot of people brought up in the comments, which I do agree with, is, Jo did sign off on it, and if she's cool with it, I think we should all bow down.
But
and be cool with it.
Somebody else also brought up the point that she's approved a lot of the other changes that have taken. She approves every change that takes place in the films, and there are plenty of people who don't like it. So you got to remember that as well. The other thing that somebody brought up in the comments was when the Shrieking Shack scene, Harry, Ron, and Hermione or Harry is hidden. How do you hide around the corner of a transparent house? Because remember, Voldemort is there. He kills Snape, or Nagini kills Snape.
Maybe they're under the cloak.
Maybe. I mean,
I'm sure they have a way. And not to mention the other minor issue, which is that we've never been introduced to the boathouse before.
Yeah.
It's in the video game.
Oh, good.
Well, I hope it won't feel like it did in Lost, whenever on the show they would add new Dharma hatches that only lasted like one episode. Like, it just felt cheap. But I think it'll be done artfully. I think it'll be done fine.
All right, well, that's all for news this week. Like we said, a little bit shorter, but of course that big story, everybody was talking about it. It's the most commented story on MuggleNet this month about Snape, the death scene changing.
And you got some tweets, right, later on?
Yeah, and later on we're going to get through some tweets. People reacted very passionately about the news at hand. So we'll get to those after chapter by chapter. For now, this week we're looking at Goblet of Fire chapters 21 through 23. I have the first chapter, Mike has the second, and Eric has the third. Chapter 21, the House Elf Liberation Front. It starts off with Harry telling Ron about what Sirius had to say about Karkaroff, and Ron thinks Karkaroff must feel pretty dumb now about his plan not working. But I disagree, because there's still 2 more challenges left, and surely Karkaroff knows that they're going to get more challenging. But would you guys say it's fair to say that Karkaroff was surprised by how well Harry did? Do you think Karkaroff would have expected him to be dead by the end of the first task?
I think it's fair to say. I mean, he has a 14-year-old in a 17-year-old's game, and he's facing a dragon. I think everybody was surprised by the fact that Harry was kind of still around.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that Harry feels that Karkaroff was, Karkaroff's the suspect here, where, he kind of sees it as having to prove something, almost in a way, where Karkaroff, I think is kind of just gritty and edgy, and I think he would prefer if there were less competition for Durmstrang in this contest. But
right.
Karkaroff is, seeing as how Karkaroff isn't the main bad guy here, it's not his disappointment to suffer, really.
And of course, I mean, clearly he's not happy with Harry's performance, because he gives him such a low mark. What does he give him, a 4? For his performance against the dragon?
Yeah.
And
he does what he can.
Clearly very biased.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit ironic, though, too, because the whole book you're really thinking that somebody put his name in the Goblet of Fire in order to kill him in the tournament, when in fact the whole reason he's been entered into the tournament is to make it through to the very end.
So, to celebrate Harry's victorious win, there's a celebration party that's held for Harry in the Gryffindor common room, and during the party, Harry's encouraged to open the golden egg that he had grabbed during the first task. He opens it and it screeches very loudly, and everybody begins to take guesses at what this very loud, annoying sound could mean. Where is the clue in that? Neville assumed that it's the sound of someone being tortured, so they're going to have to face a Cruciatus curse. But George notes that they wouldn't make them do that because it's illegal. But so Harry entering the tournament was kind of I don't know if it was illegal, but nothing's ordinary this tournament. So
interesting that Neville mentions the Cruciatus curse.
The Cruciatus curse, yeah. What he's actually hearing, is what mermaids sound like above water, right? Because the clue is in Mermish.
Yeah. So
the fact that Neville hears the screeching and associates it to, his childhood, the torture of his parents, and that's just pretty spooky.
And do you think that that's what the mermaids sound like above water? Because do they automatically scream like that, do you think, once they are brought above water? Because presumably they can't go above water.
No, they can. Because in the book, Dumbledore is seen conversing with the mer people.
Yeah, after the tournament.
But I don't think I think the fact that it's screeching, obviously, like they're singing, so there's music or whatever. Yeah, I just think it's not, again, the not human ears thing. Where it doesn't have to sound good to humans.
Yeah.
But it was really, really weird. And at this point you're like, okay, a screeching egg, this gets weirder and weirder, but it kind of pulls you in a way.
Yeah, it's a very odd clue, and I'm sure readers the first time, I can't remember that far back personally, but the first time I was probably very taken aback by that too. And I think the Cruciatus curse was certainly a valid
It seems reasonable, especially because we just learned about the killing curses this year. They're going to continue to play a big role in this book particularly, and we know that. So the question is where and when.
So Hermione learns all this party food had been from the Hogwarts kitchen, and meaning the house elves. She asks how Fred got in there because he was the one who got all the food, and they become suspicious at the question, Fred and George, why Hermione would be asking such a thing. And George suggests that Hermione probably wants to go lead them out on a strike. Half jokingly, half serious, because they know that Hermione's been up to this SPEW business lately. So later on, Hermione does go down to the kitchen, taking Fred's tip, and she comes running back into the common room after having been there to find Harry, and leads him down to the elf kitchen below the Great Hall. And it's very interesting. I really liked how Joe described it. Basically, there are 4 tables right underneath the 4 tables in the Great Hall. So somehow, the house elves presumably set all the tables and whatnot, and then the food magically transfers from the kitchen hall to the Great Hall, which was cool.
Yeah, I always liked that.
How that was described.
When I first read that, I thought that was really cool, the way that she laid that out.
So where do they cook the food? Is there a third layer? Is there like a basement to the basement? That is like...
Maybe the kitchen is just off to the side. It may have been briefly mentioned. I'm not sure. I mean, because we do hear in a little bit that, Dobby has pots and he starts hitting himself with pots and pans. So it has to be in that same room.
Yeah.
Harry brings Hermione down into the elf kitchen below the Great Hall, and Hermione had found Dobby and wanted to bring Harry to him straight away. So Harry immediately notices Dobby wearing a ton of clothing, and Dobby introduces them to Winky, who immediately begins crying. It's noted multiple times, though, that all of the elves are very enthusiastic and smiling. They're just happy to be working, except for Winky, who still feels guilty about leaving Crouch. Dobby explains he wanted pay to Harry, now being the free elf that he is. And while Dobby is explaining this, the other house elves kind of step away from Dobby because they, as Joe notes, they thought that it was as if he were carrying something contagious because he's speaking of this unspeakable kind of attitude, wanting pay, which of course sickens Hermione. Dobby reveals Dumbledore agreed to pay him $1 galleon a week and give him 1 day off a month. Hermione is horrified at this deal, but Dobby is ecstatic, and Dobby notices Hermione, reacting this way, and he says, "Oh no, Dumbledore actually originally offered 10 galleons a week and weekends off, but Dobby thought that was too much." So Hermione, this doesn't make Hermione feel any better. She's very concerned, I guess, that Dobby is still programmed, and this should maybe make something click with her, that Dobby, he's okay with this. He was okay with the lower pay. Do you guys think that should have struck Hermione, hey, maybe back off? Considering he was offered higher pay and he wanted lower pay? She
doesn't want to be proven wrong, is the thing. And so when Ron or somebody will just say, well, the house elves like it like that, she's not so quick to agree. I think eventually she sees that, but the fact that Dobby talked Dumbledore down, I'll give you 10 galleons. No, sir. No, Dobby only requires 1 galleon. It's just, it's amusing. But I think Hermione is definitely fighting. Dobby's the odd one out. I think she has more hope. Hermione has more hope for the other house elves. Maybe Winky. But in general, the whole lot of them, because they're not even as free as Dobby is. I think she tries to focus. Dobby's kind of the odd one out, I think, to both groups of people.
Do you think that Dumbledore was paying Dobby out of his personal pocket?
Is there a fund?
Yeah, probably.
Well, I'm just wondering, because it was so minimal, and Dobby probably goes to Dumbledore directly for the pay, so.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets a check or what the equivalent of that would be, like the other professors.
Because I wonder if it would even be allowed
to pay a
house elf.
Yeah.
So maybe Dumbledore kind of does it under the table.
This way Dobby doesn't have to pay taxes on that. That 1 galleon.
So Hermione asks Winky how much she's getting paid, but she says she refuses to stoop that low, still of course crying. She's okay with, I think she was wearing an article or two of clothing, but she still refused to get paid. And Dobby, by the way, Dobby's character really shines in this, chapter. The way he speaks, you really get a sense of him personally. I kind of fell in love with the Dobby character all over again, rereading this chapter. But Dobby says Winky still feels very loyal to Crouch, and Dobby doesn't feel that way as much towards Lucius, and dares himself to say something bad about Lucius. He does, but he can't quite resist the urge to punish himself for speaking badly, saying that that Lucius is a very bad Death Eater, I think the wordage was. So that sort of wraps up the conversation, and Hermione thinks Dobby's presence in the kitchen is good for the rest of the elves, as they can see how happy Dobby is as a free elf. Even though, the elves were backing away a little earlier, still very weary of what the heck Dobby is up to. And to wrap up this chapter, I just have an overall question. What's in Dobby's character that allows him to be so comfortable and happy with being free, while there's not one other elf who feels this way? Why is Dobby like this? Is it because maybe he connected with one human, being Harry? Was the fact that Harry freed Dobby suddenly like a light switch in Dobby's head?
That's a good question. Micah, what were you going to say?
I think you could almost make the argument, if you really wanted to, when you look at Dobby and where he came from, freedom would be really the best alternative in the world. Whereas you have these elves that work at Hogwarts, right? And I'm assuming that their lives are a million times better than what Dobby was experiencing when he was living at Malfoy Manor. So maybe, and I know it's a stretch, but because every case is different, but I'm assuming Dumbledore treats his house elves, or the house elves of Hogwarts, far better than, the Malfoys treated Dobby. So maybe Dobby, in the end, deep down inside, really just wanted to get away from being beaten all the time. No?
It's interesting, though, for a house elf to want that, because it almost seems like house elves
A program.
are so bound, programmed, brainwashed, whatever you want to use, that even if they have an owner who misuses them or isn't that great to them, I believe Hepzibah Smith's house elf was shown as very loyal, but she also very caretaking. My point is that Dobby, we have to remember that he actually strayed from the Malfoys and made his way to Privet Drive, not just once to visit Harry in year 2, but somehow he was collecting and stopping the owls that were going to Harry. Dobby spent a lot of time thinking about Harry Potter that year based on his own motivation, because there were talks about terrible things happening at Hogwarts. And I think that act that Dobby did back in Harry's year 2 shows that he was always kind of the odd one out. He was always somehow able to realize that he was somehow able to dissent.
The rogue house elf.
Even if house elves know right and wrong the way humans do, the fact that he was able to act on it makes him really strange.
So that wraps up chapter 21, and Micah, I hand the keys over to you now to drive us through chapter 22.
Well, chapter 22 opens the unexpected task with Harry and Ron in the back of their Transfiguration class with Professor McGonagall, and of course they're not paying attention, and it's one of those scenes where McGonagall yells at them, and
an unexpected task, by the way, but that everybody has in high school or middle school even.
Yep. I love the name of this chapter. It's a task. It's right up there with battling dragons and
it may be worse than battling dragons.
I feel like Harry would have chosen to face the dragon again.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
then find a date.
Well, McGonagall at the end of class informs all the students that the Yule Ball will be taking place, and she lets them know that it's going to be open to 4th years and above, but you're more than welcome to ask somebody who's younger than you are. Now, is that really fair? I mean, why is it fair that you can go ahead and ask somebody younger than you and they can go, but that person's best friend can't go? Is that really a good practice to be setting? And is it only open to 4th years and older because of Harry?
Oh, you mean otherwise it would be 7th years and older? Not that there are older? Huh.
That's an interesting question. I can see why they wouldn't want the 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
11,
but
or 11. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense when some of the students are also 17, 18.
Well, it's like junior and senior prom. I mean, sophomore and freshman are not allowed in unless they're dating or going with a junior,
right?
Or
I
senior.
guess that's kind of where it came from.
They all have their time. It's a formal thing. It's just kind of exclusive, so that it makes it that much more special when you are a junior or senior to attend. I do think that the 14-year-old is probably because of Harry. But then again, it would be an extremely not an entirely well populated dance if only 1 year of students were there. It would kind of.
I think we forget how young they are too. I mean, 11-year-olds at a dance just doesn't make sense. Well, you can't mix with 17, 18-year-olds. I mean, that's completely different ends of the spectrum, really.
Yep. So, during all of this, Harry also learns that he is going to have to be part of the ball's opening dance. So, deal or no deal, fair or unfair, what do you guys think? I mean, it's almost like it's one of those things that you find out about, and then all of a sudden your mind starts racing in a million different ways to try and figure out how you can get out of it. Because that seems like what was going on with Harry right then and there.
Yeah, it's a formality.
It is a formality, but also, I mean, he's just finding out about this weeks before the Yule Ball. Is that really okay to do to somebody?
But
he always seems to get information like right before. He never gets it like in advance.
It's just a typical thing that happens in high school or middle school. You have these last minute, you have to make last minute plans for the ball,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the it is a tradition, the Yule Ball, and it was obviously pre-planned, but it was supposed to be a surprise. But that does happen to Harry often. That I agree with. Where he just has things come up.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's almost like a prom king and queen. They have to they stand out above the rest of the group, so they have to take this first dance. So to speak.
And it's not exactly a school dance. It's also Durmstrang Beauxbaton, and it's only, an event that would only happen if the Triwizard Tournament were going on, which, hasn't happened in quite some time. So that's what I liked about the Yule Ball, was the fact that it's associated, with the Triwizard Tournament, and so the fact that the champions have their special dance, and it's a great honor to be one of the champions, but also a date of one of the champions is exclusive and special.
Right. Now,
I don't know what the Weird Sisters have to do with anything, but we'll get into that later.
Harry starts to notice all these female students that currently attend Hogwarts as if they didn't exist previously. And I thought, it's more of a coming of age type of, maturity, whatever you want to call it, that he's sort of experiencing this, especially since now he needs a date for the ball. And, there's a lot of little scenes here where he's walking around and he's got some female students that come up and ask him. And I think one, he was really, quick to respond and say no to her out of nowhere. He was kind of surprised at how quickly he reacted. But then he started, with all these people that they keep coming up to him, he starts to wonder to himself, would anybody want to go to the ball with him if he wasn't a champion? But, say we're at this point in the book and, it's a different title and Harry, doesn't end up in this Triwizard Tournament. But I think, wouldn't you guys agree that he's pretty famous regardless? Somebody would want to go to the ball with this guy because, let's face it, the series is named after him, right? He's still famous regardless of whether or not he's in this frickin' tournament.
Yeah, he's still the most popular Gryffindor. But I think you have to want it, and here's the situation where Harry finds himself stuck where he needs a date, and I think if he weren't a champion here, he wouldn't need to worry about this, but also he wouldn't. I think girls can be interested in you, but unless you're interested in being with a girl, there's really not a whole lot they can do, except to try and persuade you. I think so. Harry's at that point where otherwise I don't think he would be enough of himself that it would be fun for to go to a dance or fun for anybody to take him to a dance. I think the fact of the matter is that he's rising to the occasion. He has to do this. This is something,
right?
And it's in his character.
So you think it would be more of, say, he didn't find out about, no pun intended, but if he could have, he would have went stag. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
I think so. I really think so.
At this point in his life, he's just not there.
Sometimes it's just easier.
Hung out with Ron, or if Hermione hadn't gone and off with Krum, I think things would have turned out a little bit differently. But obviously, I mean, this is Hermione's time to shine. But yeah, I think
in the words of Jason Derulo, I'm riding solo. I'm riding solo. That'd be a good make music connection.
All right, so.
The song, I'm riding
yes.
solo, he'd be riding solo. Okay. Just want to make sure you get
that. So Harry and Ron find it difficult to find dates to the Yule Ball. We've pretty much established that. And it seems...
They should have went together. Who says you have to go with a girl?
Okay, so...
Dumbledore should not have a problem with that.
That's true. This is a progressive castle.
Yes.
But... the point to make here, though, it seems like everyone else is ahead of the game, doesn't it? I mean, you hear about all these people as they start to ask. It seems like Harry and Ron just really didn't plan much ahead. Not that they ever do, but we find out Hermione's going with somebody, Ginny's going with somebody, Neville's going with somebody, Seamus is going with somebody. Fred asks Angelina Johnson right in front of them. So, a little behind the eight ball these guys are.
It happens though. And there's always one or two people that still don't have a date. I mean, it's almost like Joe's writing from experience. I mean, she got it down perfectly. Almost anyone can relate to that type of situation. Most guys can. I mean, unless you're in the popular groups, but Lord knows none of us were back in the day.
It's true.
Yeah.
So we get to the point where Harry finally gets up enough courage to go and ask Cho Chang, and it's interesting reading sort of the emotions that he's going through right then and there, as he's approaching to ask her, and how quickly the emotions change from, kind of having those butterflies, or I think he talks about like having snakes in his stomach, and then all of a sudden it turns to ice cold when she tells him that she's already going with somebody else. And, kind of comparing who Harry goes after versus who Ron goes after, do you guys think it shows how mature they are at this point in the series?
Well, Harry likes Cho for the same reason Ron likes Fleur, I think. Or, well, no, I guess Harry does like... Well, Harry finds Cho very pretty, but I think he also does like her because she's also into Quidditch, right? I mean, why does Harry ask Cho? Why is Cho the one that Harry asks?
Because he likes her.
I think that's it. I mean, every once in a while, when you're in middle school, high school, heck, elementary school, you get these little crushes, and then you're like, oh, I want to...
Well, Ron has that for Fleur, but I guess also...
I think it's on a different level, though. I think more like, Fleur is like, she's hot, like, I don't know how to...
But it's the obvious,
I think there's more emotional involvement with Harry and Cho than there is with Ron and Fleur. If that makes sense.
I think in fact Ron is avoiding his feelings by asking Fleur because it can be guessed that he has those kinds of feelings if he were to sit down and think about it for Hermione. Okay, so yeah, I do think it's a difference in maturity, and obviously both guys don't actually get anywhere from asking their crushes, unfortunately.
We're going to get an email that we should have had a girl on the show. I'm telling you right now.
It is the romance side of the story.
We're trying.
You wouldn't really think though it would have been too hard for Harry to find someone, really. I mean, I think it just came down to the fact that he waited too long, and that happens a lot in real life. So
yeah.
So towards the end of the chapter, when they're all in the common room, and Harry and Ron still do not have dates, we start to get a little bit of insight into how Hermione feels towards Ron and how Ginny feels towards Harry, based on what happens and what takes place. And I added, man, Neville is a pimp. Because it's just so interesting to hear about Neville. It's like Neville asked Hermione, well then Neville asked Ginny, and it's just, you don't think that he would be the one.
Yeah, you never would have guessed that.
He's got chutzpah.
Chutzpah.
It's a fun little twist to his character.
Chutzpah.
It's a fun twist to his character because you never would have guessed that he would be the one, and then he ends up being the PIMP.
And he scores Ginny. Look at that. I mean, I think obviously she felt bad for him, but because Hermione said no, right? I mean, I think that's said.
Yeah, well, she had already committed to somebody else. That's why she said no.
Right.
Otherwise, she probably would have said yes.
But the courage, that's just the thing. Like, that's what Ron lacks. Neville has. And I guess being a Gryffindor is all about courage.
Yeah. But you do get that insight, sort of with the interaction between Hermione and Ron, specifically when Ron tries to keep having a go at her about, not really having a date and just pretending for the sake of, making herself look better. And then Ginny, who kind of turns red when Ron suggests that Harry should just go with her, but she already has a date. You get to see a little bit of the jealousy that's taking place there.
Yeah.
I'm going to need counseling after
I know. It's this chapter
brought back a lot of bad
when I
memories.
was reading it.
I wanted to, yeah.
But it does end with at least Harry 100% certain that he does have a date with Parvati.
And he asks,
all right, good.
He asked Lavender to go with Ron.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
I thought that was funny. Lavender Brown, of course, is going with Seamus at the time. But I think Harry goes up to Parvati and Lavender as they walk into the common room, and they burst into a fit of giggles. Or
there's a lot of giggling going on in this chapter.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Brought me back to high
Harry
school.
says, "Will you go to the ball with me?" And Parvati went into a fit of giggles. Harry waited for them to subside, his fingers crossed in the pocket of his robes. So he's like, "It's laughter. I can take laughter, but it's not a no." So will she say yes? That's what he's hoping.
Okay, good. Well, let's move on now to chapter 23.
Okay, so it's Christmas break at Hogwarts, and there is some interesting food items sweeping the common room. Fred and George's canary creams are a huge success. Apparently, when you eat them, you burst into feathers. And students everywhere do no longer trust food offered to them by their friends. And that's a big deal. Harry is kind of watching the twins and their aspirations all throughout this chapter. And it is just said that Fred and George plan to make more sweets that do funny things. So obviously we see here the beginning of their business enterprise, how they want to start. I think it's said right now that they want to start selling their products, which is an interesting move for them. Do you think that this was a given because Fred and George were always the jokers, that they would one day open up a joke shop? Or what else could they have been? What other career aspirations could they have undertaken and been successful at, do you think?
I don't know if it would be a ministry office necessarily or a ministry department, but I think like a lot of what they bring to the table could be used to, capture people that maybe the ministry was looking for, or, almost like spy/espionage type of stuff, because they're very creative in terms of the things that they use. And, just looking at, something as silly as eating a canary cream, and it turns you into this, human bird, essentially. I think, kind of as their skills develop over the next couple of years, in some of the things that they come up with, like, I'm sure there's a million examples. I just can't think of them right now. But, I think that they would have a career in that, because they have more talent than just being able to create these cool things that are for sale in the joke shop. They're like Inspector Gadget in a way. You know what? Okay, now I see it. Because he was always a bit of an ass clown. If you think about it, he always caught people by accident. But
it's true.
But with the twins, no, I think they're smart. They're smart. And,
no, they are.
Or they could teach.
Endlessly inventive.
They could teach. How to make some of this stuff to, a special class, an elective at Hogwarts. I'm sure Dumbledore, if he was alive, would go for that.
No, I think you're right, and I guess it's the way that the world turns, where the world frankly needs a joke shop in a year or two.
Yeah,
and that's why it's convenient for them to choose this route. But I think those are all good alternative jobs for them. But basically we see they're starting the beginnings of what will be Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes. So they just got out of breakfast or lunch, I think it was a turkey dinner, and they're leaving the Great Hall and they encounter Malfoy, and Malfoy is just Malfoy, like he usually is. But Ron notices that Hermione has altered her teeth. Malfoy makes a comment, your abnormally long molars, or long-molared mudblood. He calls her something like this. And Ron looks at her teeth and says, "Hey, Hermione, your teeth are straight and normal more than they have been." And Hermione reveals that after the last run-in with Malfoy, Hermione went to the hospital wing, and Madame Pomfrey shrunk her teeth. The fact that Hermione has basically undergone plastic surgery. She says, she tried to get her parents to allow her to do it herself, but they wanted to put braces on her, being dentists. But I'm just wondering what it says that Hermione is so affected by her personal body image, because we like to think of female characters as being maybe above that.
Contempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it makes me wonder what else what else you can enlarge and shrink in the.
Well, surely
world.
breasts.
Not that I would.
I mean, that's
Right.
a given.
You have to
but-
think about how many celebrities wouldn't have to pay for these breast enhancements. You know, if they could just
It'd be
go
quick, easy, and reliable,
to,
and not fake.
Are you kidding? You know how scary it would be to point a wand at your chest and go Engorgio? I mean, couldn't that go so wrong?
It could, yes.
So, but Hermione, really though, Hermione is basically giving in to everything, like to what Malfoy said. Okay, so next the trio finds Pigwidgeon. He returns with a letter from Sirius. I thought this was a really good note from Sirius. The more I read it, the more I liked it. It warns Harry that there are still 2 tasks left of the Triwizard Tournament, so it's plenty of time for whatever enemy there is to still hurt him. He says, great job. I was really excited to hear, how you beat him, but there's still 2 tasks left. Christmas is basically a snowball fight. Harry and the Weasleys. Hermione watches. She's still not telling Ron who she's going to the Yule Ball with, but the Yule Ball is that night. So Hermione leaves early.
I think Hermione really enjoys leaving Ron at bay here with the answer because she knows it bothers him so much, and I think it's clear that he's really wishing he asked Hermione sooner.
She likes the attention. I don't think he ever has that kind of maturity, though, to say, "Oh, I wish I had asked her sooner." Do you?
Well, right, maybe not say it out loud, but I'm sure now he thinks it because he wants to. Why does he care so much who she's going with? If
It's true.
He didn't sort of regret.
ask her.
Because he's going to end up.
Yeah, he must regret it.
He's going to end up comparing himself to whoever she has asked, and is going with. And when it turns out to be Crumb, well, he just can't compare, so he gets really jealous. But Hermione actually says, I'm not going to tell you because you'll just make fun of me, which is weird because she's playing the victim card, frankly, where she's like, oh, you'll make fun of me if I tell you. But anyway, she leaves to get ready a bit earlier than the guys do. When the guys do get ready, Ron magics off all the lace of his dress robes, so they're slightly manlier. Not really though. Still kind of not looking that great. But they go down to the ball, and Dean asks Harry and Ron how they have managed to get the best-looking girls in their year. And Ron has a funny response. He replies, "Animal magnetism." So,
what does that even mean?
It's
Seriously,
it's carnal. It's carnal. It means, instinct, like infatuation, pheromones, like that. Animal magnet. That's what I took it to mean anyway. Although I could be wrong. Anyway, so the Yule Ball starts. Harry realizes that Victor Crumb's partner is actually Hermione because they're all gathering in the Great Hall. But Harry says she didn't look like Hermione at all. And Harry notices Hermione's teeth again and also realizes that she's just carrying herself way different. Joe writes something about, maybe it's because she just wasn't carrying 28 books like she usually is, that she just has this different stature, and, all the underclassmen, bunch of Slytherins, everybody's glaring at Hermione, and she just seems to really shine at the Yule Ball. My question is, what aspect of her character is shining right now? Because she's glowing, but why? What about this? Is it like the recognition she never got from Harry or Ron, or what exactly about this allows Hermione to just live in the moment?
I think it's that, and also what Harry just noticed. Again, the smaller teeth, and maybe she's got this new self-image that she's really proud of.
I guess.
She feels good about herself. I mean, that could have been something that really bothered her, that we didn't... I mean, we kind of knew it bothered her because she was made fun of for it, but... now she doesn't have it. It was fixed, and I bet that made her feel really good about herself.
Yeah. Karkaroff, just to keep that in mind, he is the villain, I guess, at the moment for the readers. He is seen looking disapproving of Hermione and Crumb, and it's actually said like Ron glares at Hermione as she walks by, but Karkaroff, Harry notices, is also glaring. And I asked, is this due to like Karkaroff's Death Eater or anti-Mudblood beliefs? Because he doesn't want to see his star player Crumb go out with this Muggleborn? Is that why he's glaring, or why would Karkaroff have an opinion of Hermione otherwise?
Maybe just because Maybe just because she's a Hogwarts student. Or maybe because she's friends with Harry. Or maybe because of the mudblood thing.
I think it could be any of those. Yeah, I like what Andrew said, though. I think he's not really a big Hogwarts supporter. I don't think. So
yeah, seeing Crumb seeing Crumb possibly have feelings for Hermione may make Karkaroff worried that he may play to the advantage of Hogwarts at the tournament or something like that. Who knows? He could be having this whole big theory behind it.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. Especially because Ron uses a similar argument against Hermione later. But okay, well, the food at this Yule Ball is different. I didn't remember this at all when I read this, and from earlier. But there are menus in their seats, and Dumbledore sets the example by picking up his menu, and there are choices, and he announces his choice, like vocally, to the menu, and then his food appears, which I thought was really, really cool.
Oh, well, that's how it works at Sonic drive-thrus here in America. You speak towards the menu, and it comes to you. That's nothing new, Eric.
Okay, my bad. Jeez. All right. Harry takes the moment to think of Hermione because these menus means that house elves have basically provided like maybe 3 times as much food or something. He says that he's worried about the house elves for Hermione. He looks over though. He says Hermione must really be thinking about SPEW, and it turns out Hermione hardly noticed. Or, it said she hardly notices or appears to notice what it is she's eating. So she's really in the moment. Like she's with Crumb obviously. But she's lost. She's not even thinking about house elf rights at this moment, which just shows that there are a lot of good things happening to Hermione at this moment. So, similarly, Crumb tells Hermione, he starts to tell her what Durmstrang is like, but Karkaroff cuts her off, saying that, and Dumbledore interjects, he's like, oh, but it's all about cooperation, and Karkaroff says, well, every school has their secrets. And he says that those secrets are, Karkaroff likes those secrets to be kept among the schools. And Dumbledore says that he doesn't feel he'll ever understand all of the secrets of Hogwarts, and that just that morning, Dumbledore, while walking to the bathroom, encountered a room full of chamber pots that, when he tried finding later, he could not. So, this is interesting because I believe, and it's been confirmed, that this room is actually the room of requirement. And Dumbledore winks at Harry, by the way. He knows Harry's listening, and he winks at him after mentioning this mysterious room.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just another one of those things where when you go back into the books and you read them again, you realize that things were introduced a lot earlier than you previously thought.
Ron and Hermione have a fight, guys. This is bad. This lasts for 2 pages in the book, and this is a 30-page chapter, but this fight lasts a while. And I'm going to summarize it here. Ron tells Hermione that Crumb was probably sent by Karkaroff to get close to her to spy on Harry, and accuses Hermione of helping Crumb solve the mystery of the egg. And I wrote, not only does this belittle all effort on Hermione's part to gain Crumb's affection, because they've been hanging at the library a lot, but it also extremely belittles her loyalty to Harry and Ron, and Gryffindor, and Hogwarts. And I just wrote, I really think Ron has gone too far.
Well, I think he's just trying to make her jealous, sort of, like, oh, you should have went with me, you shouldn't have picked Crumb, because, ... because Crumb is fraternizing with the enemy.
Even though he says that, though, I just feel like everything about how Ron approaches this, not only is it not the right way to go about it, but what he says is just extremely the wrong thing to say. There's no way that Hermione's going to say, oh yes, you're right, because he's attacking her character on so many levels that he's just being stupid because he knows that that's not true.
Well, it's also a complete role reversal from where you were at the beginning of the book, where Ron was the one that was so enamored by Crumb. I mean,
well, Hermione says as much. I'm not the one with the model of him in my dormitory.
Ready to have a freaking bromance over there.
Yeah. So, anyway, another interesting bit here. Hermione, right before she stomps off, she says against Ron that the whole point of this Triwizard Tournament is international magical cooperation. And Ron shouts back, no, it's not. The point is winning. And Hermione leaves, And Crumb comes by. He was just getting drinks, like Hermione said. And Percy is at the Yule Ball, actually, on behalf of Mr. Crouch. Comes over to Ron and says, "Oh, you're talking to Crumb, making friends with Victor Crumb. Excellent that you've made friends with Victor Crumb. The whole point of this tournament is international magical cooperation." So, I thought that was funny. It's validation for Hermione.
But it's all bound to happen too, by the way, these little fights. Whether or not I think, that Hermione was going to go to the Yule Ball with Crumb, because I think there's just a lot of tension between all these players. They're all young. This is their first major kind of, life-threatening sort of experience. And so I don't blame them when all this tension is mounting.
See, but I don't buy the international magical cooperation thing, because it didn't have any payoff later in the books. If you think about it, it's not like, again, and I think that we talked about this in another episode, but it's not like you had, the final battle and in came Durmstrang and in came Beauxbatons, and you didn't have that. And so that's why when I'm reading this and, it's like, it's all about international magical cooperation. You would believe it more if it, aside from Bill and Fleur and Victor Crumb showing up at the wedding, there was no tie-in to that later on.
On the way back up to the dormitory, Cedric Diggory stops Harry on the steps and suggests that Harry take a bath with his egg. Harry questions Cedric's motives to himself as he enters the Gryffindor dormitory, and when he does enter the Gryffindor dormitory, Harry finds that Hermione and Ron are in a, quote, blazing row. Hermione suggests Ron pluck up the courage and ask her to the next dance before somebody else does, instead of waiting until the last minute. And it's said that Harry even stuck up for Hermione once before, but at this point he does not enter the engagement, and says that Harry valued being on speaking terms with Ron far too much to speak his mind right now. It's kind of an upsetting end.
Next dance won't be till Bill and Fleur's wedding, though. So it was kind of, Hermione didn't really even have a dance in mind, I assume.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a dance next year or anything. Not a yearly dance like
I think it was just a figure of speech.
So. Yeah.
Ask me the next time. Yeah, she's calling him a coward, and he is. I mean, we know that about Ron, though.
Yeah. Do you think that he questions Cedric's motives though because how he feels about Cho Chang? Because really,
yes.
if you remember, Harry, gave a clue to Cedric, so it's only fair that Cedric would give a clue to Harry.
Well, that's why Cedric comes up to him. He says, "You helped me with the dragons, so I should help with the egg."
Yeah.
But on the way up to the dormitory, Harry's like, "Well, I wonder if he's just trying to make me look like a fool so that I look like a fool in front of Cho." It really is about girls, though, because Harry's been watching Cedric and Cho dance, I guess, at the Yule Ball, and it's said that he wants to kick something. So he's really starting to question, I guess, himself and girls. He's thinking about girls far more often now. As the first time, but of course, Cedric Diggory's intentions are pure.
So that's chapter 23, and that is chapter by chapter for this week. Now, on to today's Twitter question. Earlier in the show, we were talking about the decision to change the location of Snape's death scene. I think that's important for people to keep in mind. Snape's still dying. He's still dying the same way. It's just the locale. It's the backdrop. And if we're getting a better backdrop, hey, it's not so bad. Anyway, here's what some other people thought. We asked the people who follow us on Twitter. If you'd like to follow us, just go to twitter.com/MuggleCast and sign up or log in and press follow. So here's a couple of the comments we received. Alex Mort said, "As long as they don't destroy the story, I think it'll be fine. Would have liked to see it just like the book, though. Oh well." A Weasley girl wrote, "The change wasn't needed. The shack tied in The Last Generation and Snape's near death 30 years earlier by Lupin to this one."
Funny, I never made that connection before.
Wait, what was that?
Maybe Joe forgot that too.
It's true. Well, Snape nearly died, remember, when he nearly saw the werewolf or whatever, Remus Lupin, as a kid, and now he actually does die in the shack. It's almost like the shack has it out for Severus Snape, and that's
what I
important.
said back when we were discussing it earlier.
Yeah, I heard you say it then too, but I'm saying prior to this episode I hadn't made that connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually didn't hear that earlier this episode.
Yeah, well, you don't pay attention, so...
Robin M7 says, as long as Alan Rickman does a good and truthful death for Snape, I don't really mind the changes. It's the acting that matters. Stand Andrea says, people need to stop judging the change so harshly. Yes, it was a huge scene, but look how nicely they changed Hedwig's death. That's a good point. People were a little, to be fair though, some people still were bothered by it, but hey, it was kind of cute. You know, Hedwig was trying to save Harry, and she died saving Harry in the movie. Amber's Woolley says, I'm not too happy with the change. The death was plenty dramatic in the book. I had been excited to see how it looked on screen. Passionate for Penn said, I don't like the idea. The Shrieking Shack is a pretty important location in the series, and I don't see how it'll work out. And finally, Conroy Hines says, I think it will be good. If JKR likes it, that's good enough for me. I think it will be like how Hedwig's death was. Also better.
Well, it seems to be, pretty evenly split, right?
Pretty mixed. Yeah, I would say it's very mixed. So if you want to get in on these Twitter question and answer sessions, just follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/MuggleCast.
You know, Andrew, one thing, one comment somebody made, and I don't know if this is what you were referring to before when you said that there was more to it, but when this was posted, somebody commented that it would be cool almost if the memories from Snape kind of leaked out into the lake, and that's where you got the story of everything that has been going on with Snape for the entire series.
That would be cool.
You know, it'd be funny because the Three Brothers scene starts with a feather landing in a pond.
Oh, yeah. You got to play off that. Yeah, no, that's a cool idea.
It would be better than, again, what happened in the book. Harry had to go all the way up to Dumbledore's office, right? In the middle of everything, he went up to Dumbledore's office. Voldemort's like, Harry Potter, you have an hour or you will die. And he just takes the time, he goes up to Dumbledore's office, puts all the memories in the pensieve, relives a whole life, Snape's whole life, all the important moments, relives all of that while there's a battle going on.
Yeah, I think that is a good possibility, though, because I doubt that they're, in the movie, going to make him go back up to Dumbledore's office to look at these memories.
To sit but, so it's one of those things, I guess it works in the books, but in the movie, I can see where they would want to change it. I feel like I'm too in favor of change in this seventh book in the movie, but I really like, and I think you guys even really liked part one, so I think you guys are just as optimistic as I am about this.
Let's move on to Muggle Mail now. Micah, can you read the first email from Steven?
First email comes from Steven, 21 of New York.
I just said that.
No, you just said Steven. Anyway, he says, Hey MuggleCasters, in the chapter-by-chapter segment of episode 218, you discuss why Mad-Eye Moody could see through the invisibility cloak, while Death, from Tale of the Three Brothers, could not. You say that the only logical explanation is that Death didn't have Moody's magical eye. Being a big fan of the Deathly Hallows subplot, I thought I'd just point out that the story of the three brothers actually meeting Death isn't necessarily true. In Chapter 35 of Deathly Hallows, page 714 of the U.S. edition, Dumbledore explains to Harry that the story of the Peverell brothers meeting Death was probably just a myth. He says whether they met Death on a lonely road, I think it more likely that the Peverell brothers were simply gifted, dangerous wizards who succeeded in creating those powerful objects. The story of them being Death's own Hallows seems to me the sort of legend that might have sprung up around such creations. So while I agree it's perfectly logical that Moody's magical eye could see through the invisibility cloak, I just thought it should be noted that the cloak never really belonged to, quote, Death. Keep up the great work. I love the podcast and have enjoyed growing up with you guys for the past 5 years.
Aww. Growing up. That's kind of nice because I'm also 21. We've grown up together. Our voices have deepened together. Well, I don't know about his voice, but I know mine has.
Yes, very much.
Well, that's a good point, and I'm glad he brought that up because I reinforced the point when I checked the lexicon last episode about his magical eye being able to see through the invisibility cloak, but Stephen brings up a good point as well. Next email comes from Lauren Z, 19 of Allentown, Pennsylvania. Hey guys, I just have a comment about episode 218 of MuggleCast. You talked about Aberforth's role in the movie being a, quote, blink and you'll miss it role, as described by the actor. and you all expressed concern about how much Aberforth we would get to see. When I read that comment, I read it differently and thought he meant it's the type of role that comes once, and if you blink, you'll miss the opportunity to play such a role, rather than talking about the actual screen time of the role. I could be entirely off, but it was what I had thought when I read it, and thought I would share this alternate interpretation. Thanks, love the show, and by the way, where's Laura? We haven't seen or heard from her in a while. Thanks. I completely disagree with Lauren. I do not.
Hang on.
Think
this actually makes a lot of sense. I read this and I was like, oh my god, that's what he meant.
No,
Isn't it?
I disagree.
Well, why not? Because
I don't know.
He goes on to explain and talks about how it's pages and pages of dialogue, exposition. So blink and you'll miss it. That makes perfect sense. That you know, if he were to blink and he'd miss the opportunity to play this role, that I didn't even think of that.
It's valid, but I still think it's very quick. Knowing how the filmmakers shorten down everything, you know, and make changes, I think.
But you mean you don't think that it is 4 pages of dialogue in the movie?
4 pages compressed into 2 sentences.
But no, because it can't just be 2 sentences because it's complicated. It's all about Dumbledore and tying that subplot from the first film back into part 2.
Eric, some people are quite talented at taking long statements and shortening them down. I know you're not, but some people are.
I'll take the next one.
Well, in response to the second part of her email about Laura, we should mention Laura is taking a extended break from the show, because she is now about to live in Costa Rica for, a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but she got a job down there. We're very proud of her. She's going to be teaching children in Costa Rica, teaching Spanish, teaching English. They know Spanish. She'll be teaching English. So we're very excited for her. But unfortunately, this means she's not going to be on the show any longer. I'm sorry to say. But maybe we'll try to find another girl. It's hard to find another girl to match Laura or any of the other, you know, great hosts we've had. So we're working on it. Anyway, Eric, can you take the next email from Sarah?
Next email comes from Sarah Schwartz of Georgia. She says, "Hey everyone, just started listening to your show. Literally, episode 218 was the first one I heard, which was last week's. And I heard you guys...
Welcome!
Yeah, welcome. I heard you guys talking about things that we were upset about because they had to be cut from the movies. Because that was my first time listening, I was unable to talk to you guys in time for the show, but I was wondering if I could still share this with you. Of course you can. What I was a little upset about from Order of the Phoenix was that there was not any mention of Hermione's coins that were given out to all the members of Dumbledore's army that told them where to attend meetings. Now I am not sure how everyone will meet back in the Room of Requirement for Deathly Hallows Part 2. Keep up the great work, guys, and I can't wait to hear your future podcasts. I will most definitely be going back to listen to your older ones. You just got a new fan. Thanks for listening, and sorry it was late. Sarah.
I'm sure they'll find a way around that. I mean, I'm sure there's another way that they can go about making sure that everybody congregates in the Room of Requirement without using those coins, even though it was cool that they did that in the books.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Quite a bit more people show up, too. That's what I liked about it, was that these old students, you know, Oliver Wood, and then all them just show up. And
did they cast him for Deathly Hallows Part 2?
Biggerstaff.
I don't think so. Getting in the nitty-gritty
like
here. I don't think so. Micah, next email.
Next email is from Alyssa, 15 of New York. I get all the New York emails. Hey guys, I'm listening to your latest podcast and you talked a lot about the Triwizard Tournament. Never really understood a part of the tournament, so I thought that I should ask you. Not a good idea. For each task, the teachers drag all the students from their classes to go watch the tournament. I never really understood how this could be any entertainment at all, except for getting to miss class, as you could only see what was happening during one of the tasks. For the lake and maze tournaments, the students would have to talk amongst themselves for a couple of hours until the champions emerged. Unless you could see what was going on in the old Triwizard tournaments, I don't even understand how the tournament could have gotten started in the first place. Any thoughts? Thanks for everything. Alyssa.
Well, I guess they're kind of on the edge of their seats because there's a chance they could die in the water or in the maze. So I think, just the fact that they are sort of hanging on, and don't forget, the band is sort of playing, so maybe that's some entertainment.
I wondered that too.
Maybe Filch.
I agree with what she says, though. I mean, I'm assuming not the tasks obviously are not the same every time.
But as a spectator sport, or
it's boring. Yeah, it's got to be boring unless you're at the Dragon Challenge.
See, no, but again, I disagree because you want to be there when the first person emerges.
Well,
but you can't see what's going on though, for an hour
because your school is in it. You have some kind of, you're compelled to go out and show your support for your school, much like a Quidditch game. But at least in a Quidditch game, you can see every move. The lake at Hogwarts is described as the Black Lake. You can't see but 5 feet in front of you. So even if they were able to somehow show or project that, like an image of what's going on, it would,
like they have HD TVs on either side.
Same with the maze, but even the maze, like, obviously, unexpectedly, it was a portkey. So I feel like if when Harry and Cedric disappeared, why wasn't there more chaos almost? I know in the movie there's not chaos until they get back. There's that celebration. But the fact that the portkey wasn't, or the cup wasn't supposed to be a portkey, shouldn't people have had plenty of time to start freaking out about that? And I just uncovered a plot hole, I think. But basically, I really agree with this email.
And the final email today from Kaya Angeli 15 of Montville, Australia. Hi guys, love the show. All of you guys are great. I've been away for a while and had to catch up on the episodes, and I missed the Weird Places thing, but I really wanted to tell you guys the weird place that I listen to you guys. I work in a shop that sells Himalayan salt and big rock crystals and some beeswax ear candles. I listen to MuggleCast when the other worker is out to lunch and I want something to entertain me while I cut big strips of cloth for ear candles and clean and pack salt lamps and pack salt. I don't want to sound repetitive, but you guys are great and I really enjoy the podcast. So to stop me from feeling so alone when I work. XOXOXO Kaya. There's another interesting way. And yes, podcast, absolutely great thing to listen to while you're working because you don't really need your ears, if you're, for not for all working tasks anyway, if you're just doing computer work or number work. So, all great reasons.
Himalayan salt and big rock crystals and beeswax ear candles. That's gotta be a cool job.
That may be the weirdest place that we've had so far.
I feel like it wins an award of some sort.
I need somebody who listens in a cave. If you listen in a cave, email in. That's
Osama, get on it. Twitter.com/MuggleCast. We know you're on the Twitter.
Hey, before we wrap up the show, I want to remind everybody about this new podcast that Ben, Shane, and I are doing called Hype. HypePodcast.com. You can go learn about the show. You can download the 2 episodes we've released so far with the third one. Actually, the third one should be out by now by the time you listen to this. And, do take a listen, give it a try. We've been getting a lot of great feedback about it, and we're going to continue to improve the show. And it was also just featured by iTunes as a new and notable podcast, which we were very happy to see. So we thank everyone who's listened, and be sure to check it out. HypePodcast.com, or just search for Hype Podcast on the iTunes store. So after you visit HypePodcast.com, hop on over to MuggleCast.com. This podcast that you're listening to, we have a great website for it. You can click on contact at the top and fill out our feedback form if you have some feedback about anything we discussed on today's show. And on the right side of the page, you're going to find a few links that are very important. We have the iTunes page where you can subscribe and also review us. A quick reminder, when you click the iTunes link, you have to click view in iTunes and then hit subscribe. By doing that, you will get the latest episodes whenever you go into the podcast section of your iTunes and press refresh. Sometimes when we release a new episode, people say, oh, it's not on iTunes yet. It's not on iTunes yet. It is, but you have to press subscribe free. And then it will show you the podcast section of your iTunes, and then it'll download the most recent episodes every time we have a new show out. All you have to do is press refresh after you subscribe.
How many episodes are currently on the feed still?
We keep about 10 at a time on the feed.
Okay, so Sarah, our new listener, who just listened to us last week for the first time, can get the last 10 episodes on iTunes. But also, on the MuggleCast website, which we're talking about, there's a wall of fame, which are sort of our top kind of listener-rated, and ones that we feel are the greatest episodes. But all episodes are available for download and for read. Transcripts of each episode on MuggleCast.com.
And as Eric mentioned, with the transcripts, I think right now we have up till episode 209, and we're obviously releasing 219, so we're a little bit behind. I plan on actually getting up, I think, till episode 215 sometime this weekend, so we will be caught up. What we try and do is get a transcript out, usually a week to 10 days after a show is released. So feel free to head on over to the site. And, again, I know we do this from time to time, but I think it's necessary that we do thank everybody who does work on the transcripts, because it is not a very easy job, to do. It's kind of a thankless job, and these people work extremely hard to put these transcripts together. So, thank you to Cam, who leads up the team over there, and all the, I don't even know how many people he has working for him right now, but there's a lot.
Thank you, everyone, again for listening. I am Andrew Sims.
I am Eric Skull.
I'm Ben Shane.
What?
And I'm Mike Atenimo.
We'll see you next time for episode 220. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Where's Ben? New and notable. How does a podcast get that way? I mean,
well, you see, I am a podcasting legend, so when I release a new podcast, iTunes takes
You're
notice.
A person of interest?
Yes.
Is that it?
It's based on ego,
No,
Eric.
I'm a legend. I'm a podcast.
Purely on ego.
But really,
No,
really,
downloads,
kidding.
I would
but
think,
it means
right?
that somebody
Downloads.
from iTunes somewhere listened to your show and
Right.
forwarded it up.
No, it's a very nice honor. We thank them a
Well,
lot
won't
for
they
it.
track like downloads too? Like,
You know what? The downloads, quite frankly, have not been like extraordinary. So I think we may have a fan at iTunes or something. I don't know. I don't know what
Mikey
the process
B.
is.
Doesn't he work for Apple?
Yeah, right.
I listen to you at Apple, where they construct iPhones around me. Yes, that'd be a cool job.